Yes, it's very similar like Andrés Iniesta. It's a talent, it's a big talent, and it's not a surprise for me because I'm training every day with him, so it's incredible. He's an incredible player and 19 years old. So
when people talk about the all-time great midfielders from Spain, two names come up with near religious reverence: Xavi Hernandez and Andrés Iniesta. Those two defined an era by turning possession into poetry.
I think Xavi and Iniesta, they were different players. Xavi was amazing at controlling a game. Along with, you can't rule Busquets out of that as well. He probably doesn't get the credit he deserves because the three of them were sensational. Iniesta was a little bit different because he could go past people.
By probing defenses with tiny, perfectly timed touches, and by making entire matches feel like a slow, inevitable tide that the rest of the world simply watched. The idea that someone would step into that stylistic lineage felt like a hopeful fantasy for many Barcelona fans, until a slim teenager from the Canary Islands arrived, barefoot in spirit and heavy with technique. They named him Pedri. On first glance, comparing Pedri González to Andrés Iniesta might seem like instant nostalgia-steeped hyperbole. But watch them fold the game into their palms, and the similarities become obvious. An economy of movement, an almost shy brilliance, a capacity to change the rhythm of a game with a single understated action. Where Iniesta had an uncanny feel for the decisive moment, Pedri brings that same instinct with a modern motor. He presses, he recovers, he accelerates play, and sometimes, when the moment calls for it, he scores or produces the pass that feels inevitable in retrospect. This video tells the story of Pedri's rise, the rejection and the hunger, the break at Las Palmas, the sudden leap into Barcelona's first team, the European stage that announced him to the world, the awards that followed, the heavy cost of overuse and injury, and the careful hope-filled chapter that lies ahead. Along the way, I'll argue, with scenes, facts, and context, why Pedri is not simply a player who reminds us of Iniesta, but a midfielder who has quietly built a case to be considered among the very best in world football. The boy from Tenerife, who became Barcelona's conscience Pedri, wasn't born amid academy acclaim or casting yard accolades. He was born in Tegueste on Tenerife in the Canary Islands, a place that breeds footballing local heroes and resilient young athletes used to rowing against the tide of attention that normally flows to the Spanish mainland. As a child, he had the kind of fixation with football that seems to cleave reality in two: school, then the ball. Scouts noticed his calm on the ball, his lightness of touch, and more importantly, his intelligence, the awareness that made him look older than his years. At 15, he had a trial with Real Madrid. According to the story he tells, bad timing and weather conspired. Snow in Madrid. And when he finally trained with the staff, the verdict was blunt: not ready. That rejection could have been a headline of wasted promise. For Pedri, it was instead a coal that fed a fire. He returned home, joined Las Palmas, worked, and 2 years later signed for Barcelona for a figure that now looks like a historical bargain, around 5 million euros. The price tag was small compared to what he would become, but Barcelona signed him because they saw what Las Palmas had already glimpsed, a player who plays higher than his years and cooler than his age suggested. Sources confirm Pedri's Las Palmas beginnings and his move to Barcelona in 2019. Wikipedia, there is a narrative romance from rejection to redemption, but the practical truth is harsher. Pedri arrived in Barcelona at a moment when the club needed fresh blood. The old guard had moved on. The club's finances were in trouble, and a new identity was being sketched in a ledger and on a tactics board. The timing for Pedri was accidental and perfect. He walked into a club that needed brains and hands on the wheel more than headline signings, and he took the wheel with an astonishing sense of calm. From the Segunda to Camp Nou, how he announced himself, Pedri's first season at Barcelona was the kind of rookie story that makes older fans blink. He adjusted from Segunda football to the fierce lights of Camp Nou, not by fireworks, but by subtlety. His first appearances in Barcelona blue felt like watching somebody rediscover an old language. He had the grammar of possession and a vocabulary of passes short and long, precise, and timing perfect. He didn't need to shout with goals to declare himself. Instead, his touch, his ability to find space, and his intelligence with the ball spoke loud enough. Only weeks into his life at Barcelona, he was starting in the Champions League and even scored on one of those nights, a marker that he was not merely a prospect but a real option. Ronald Koeman, and later his coaches, quickly understood that Pedri's presence offered a kind of stabilizing intelligence to a team looking to rebuild. Barcelona didn't throw him into a fantasy of adulation. The club elected at first to give trust and minutes. He repaid both. Europe staged Pedri's summer of revelation. The moment that shifted the global conversation about Pedri was the summer of the European Championship, UEFA Euro 2020, played in 2021 due to the pandemic. Spain's coach made a bold and perhaps unusual call. An 18-year-old was not just included in the squad, but trusted with real responsibility. Pedri did not act like somebody learning the ropes. He became the engine. In the semi-final against Italy, a match that would define and later haunt that tournament, Pedri completed 65 of 66 passes over 120 minutes, a statistic that borders on the mythical for someone so young. His calm under pressure and his capacity to sustain intelligent choices across a full tournament prompted comparisons to the great Spanish midfielders and won him UEFA's Young Player of the Tournament award. These are facts people will point to when describing how the broader football world first took notice. The Euro performance was not a one-off showcase. It was a calibration. Pedri was not just technically gifted, he had tactical adaptability, stamina, operative awareness in tight spaces, and the kind of composure that allows a team to breathe in possession. Critics and fans who had dismissed his raw stats as thin were forced to see the fuller picture. He was helping create the chances that didn't always end on his name, but were impossible to imagine without his presence. Awards, recognition, and the paradox of influence without the stat sheet glow, 2021 became Pedri's banner year. He was awarded the Golden Boy Award as Europe's best young player and won global recognition that included the Copa Trophy nomination and a Ballon d'Or shortlist nod. Not bad for someone still only in their teens. Awards are shiny things, but for Pedri they were confirmation rather than revelation. He was already proving himself on the pitch. One of the constant refrains in any conversation about Pedri is the Pedri paradox. Look at his raw numbers, goals, assists, and they can feel underwhelming next to flashier midfielders. Watch him move a match, and the paradox dissolves. He is the pass that makes the assist possible, the off-the-ball intelligence that creates the lane, the pressing cue that pulls two defenders away. His value is mostly invisible to the casual stat sheet viewer. He's the anatomy of a midfielder, structure, heart, and function. That paradox is why some modern fans, conditioned by highlight reels and flashy individual metrics, might not place him in the conversation for best midfielder immediately. But coaches and players, the ones who live inside matches, see Pedri as a centerpiece. His work is the scaffolding upon which others flourish. The cost of being indispensable, overuse, and injuries. The same season that thrust Pedri into the conversation as a generational talent also carried a hidden cost. He was young, yet he was played like a veteran. Barcelona, Spain, and later Olympic duty combined into a Herculean workload. That intense mileage displayed a young player who could shoulder responsibility. But the human body is not a machine. It accumulates toll. By 2022 and beyond, hamstring problems and muscle injuries interrupted the momentum of the teenager who had become indispensable. He missed long stretches and had to be carefully managed. The injuries were not trivial. They were career-shaping in how they interrupted development rhythm and dented the kind of confidence that comes from prolonged form. Transfermarkt's injury logs and reporting from the period show a pattern of hamstring and muscle troubles across 2021-2023. In June and July of major tournaments, he often left everything on the pitch for club and country. That heroic streak, the willingness to play and give all, became the very thing that demanded a new relationship with rest and prevention. Barcelona, under various managers and medical teams, gradually shifted toward a more protective plan. Periodic rests, clearer minute management, and an eye toward long-term fitness rather than instant unsustainable output. A new tactical life under Hansi Flick change of coach can equal change of identity. When Hansi Flick arrived as Barcelona's manager, he altered the tempo and the way the midfield's roles were constructed. Flick placed Pedri in tactical structures that used his unpredictability and intelligence. Allow him to roam, give him creative freedom, and protect him with complementary midfield partners who can carry the defensive burden. That freedom has allowed Pedri to be more effective in the final third and to add more end product than earlier seasons. Recent analysis of Flick's use of Pedri shows the German coach values the player's verticality and interline intelligence, playing him not as an immobile metronome, but as an active, creative force with license to find pockets of space. Recent press and coaching statements underline how Pedri's minutes have been more carefully managed under Flick, and that management has coincided with improved durability and influence. Pedri's best seasons under Flick saw him becoming more productive in goals and assists without sacrificing his unique control. The tactical switches allowed Barcelona to intensify pressing while keeping possession reliability, a hybrid of the Spanish tradition and the modern high-tempo pressing game. The heartbreak of Euro 2024 and the grace that followed. In the summer of 2024, at Euro 2024, Pedri was not just a spectator. He was expected to be one of Spain's major players. But fate can be cruel. In the quarterfinal against Germany, a knee tackle by Toni Kroos resulted in a sprain that ruled him out for the rest of the tournament. It was a bitter and public moment. Pedri's tears on the touchline were emblematic of the deep personal stakes for players who invest their entire emotional selves in tournaments like these. Both the player and Kroos spoke publicly. Kroos apologized, and Pedri accepted with grace, showing the kind of sportsmanship that always seems to accompany the softer-voiced players. The reporting and match coverage from the time document the incident and its fallout. That injury could have been a private calamity. Pedri managed to weather it publicly in the way that had become central to his identity. Quiet resilience. Barcelona and Spanish staff tended to his recovery carefully. The long arc of injury and management reinforced the need for smart athletic care, pacing, monitored minutes, and smarter training loads. The emphasis became not simply about getting him fit, but about preserving the long-term peak of a player who must be treated as a rare resource. Securing the future, contract renewal, and long-term commitment. Skeptics sometimes ask whether a club truly believes in a player when the headlines slow. Barcelona, faced with decisions about finances and long-term planning, showed its hand in January 2025 by extending Pedri's contract to the 30th of June 2030. The deal was more than administrative, it was strategic. Barca understood that if they wanted to rebuild sustainably, they needed midfielders who could be the core, a player who could hold the middle while younger talents around him matured. The club's official statement on the contract and press coverage made clear how much faith Barca placed in Pedri's physical and tactical future. The contract is a signal to the fan base and to football's marketplace. Pedri is not a temporary spark. He is a foundational piece of Barcelona's vision for the next 5 years. What makes Pedri special? Technical notes for the serious eye. If you want to understand why coaches and teammates value Pedri so highly, watch these things closely. First touch and palate control. Pedri's touch is a metronome. He receives with purpose and rarely wastes a phase, by needing multiple touches to control a pass. This economy makes him a natural pivot in tight spaces. Passing range with intent. He can thread short, incisive passes between lines, and occasionally launch a ball that opens a defense. His passes are not glitter for the highlight show. They are efficient, surgical, and timed to the trajectory of play. Spatial intelligence. He seems to sense half spaces before they exist, drifting into pockets to receive the ball with his head up and danger anticipated. When a midfielder can consistently find the soft spots between lines, the rest of the team breathes easier. Pressing and recovery. Pedri's defensive work is understated but effective. He reads triggers in pressing sequences, cuts passing lanes, and helps the team recover possession effectively. This defensive support is part of the reason managers have used him both as an 8 and a 10. Composure and constraints. Playing for Barca and Spain brings pressure and markers on the player's back. Pedri plays like someone who was meant for pressure. He keeps his decisions quick and calm. Nothing about his play suggests he's overwhelmed by the moment. These technical aspects combine to create a player whose primary measurable value isn't always summed by goals or assists. It's the extent to which the team's structure works better when he is present. Comparisons to Iniesta. Flattering, fair, and limiting. Comparisons to Andrés Iniesta are inevitable and often helpful. They frame the listener's imagination, but they are not perfect. Iniesta had match-defining moments in finals, an uncanny knack for pull-the-string goals that would enter football lore. Pedri has not, yet, lived the same late-career myth-building moments in finals, partly because of his young age, and partly because he has been interrupted by injuries. Instead, Pedri's resemblance to Iniesta is primarily stylistic. Both are compact, clever, and possess an empathic understanding of teammates' movement. But the comparison becomes limiting if it forces expectations that Pedri must replicate Iniesta's trophy-littered narrative on the exact same timeline. Pedri is writing a modern career in a modern Barcelona. Higher intensity, different squad dynamics, varied tactical concepts, and the comparison should work as a complement, not a blueprint. In the semi-final against Italy, a match that would define and later haunt that tournament, Pedri completed 65 of 66 passes over 120 minutes, a statistic that borders on the mythical for someone so young. His calm under pressure and his capacity to sustain intelligent choices across a full tournament prompted comparisons to the great Spanish midfielders and won him UEFA's Young Player of the Tournament award. These are facts people will point to when describing how the broader football world first took notice. The Euro performance was not a one-off showcase. It was a calibration. Pedri was not just technically gifted. He had tactical adaptability, stamina, operative awareness in tight spaces, and the kind of composure that allows a team to breathe in possession. Critics and fans who had dismissed his raw stats as thin were forced to see the fuller picture. He was helping create the chances that didn't always end on his name, but were impossible to imagine without his presence. The tactical role he occupies in modern Barca and Spain Barcelona's midfield ecosystem in the mid-2020s is less about a single genius pulling all strings and more about a constellation of talents who rotate, press, and interchange. Pedri fits as the node that connects pressing triggers with creation opportunities. He gives Barcelona both defensive balance and forward imagination. For Spain, he represents continuity from the possession-first era, but with an added physical resilience. He can press effectively and still hold composure when space collapses. That duality, the ability to do both transition defense and fine passing, makes him essential to national team plans and why managers have so often trusted him in high-stake tournaments. The human side, temperament, public voice, and the quiet Captain Pedri's public persona is notable for what it is not. He speaks softly, lets the football do the talking, and rarely seeks personal spotlight. But his actions shout. He returns from injury with humility. He forgives mistakes or tackles in public with sportsmanlike grace. And he remains attached to the kind of consistent professionalism that endears him to both coaches and supporters. When he signs a long-term contract or plays through pain for the team, there is a sense he acts out of collective duty rather than self-glorification. That temperament makes him particularly suited to a Barcelona project that often values collective coherence above individual stardom. Where the next chapters might go, if the last 5 years are any indicator, the next phase of Pedri's career will be about three things: staying fit, increasing decisive output, and collecting titles, while maturing into a leadership role. Fitness and minutes management. The medical and coaching staff have learned how precious his continuity is. The emphasis will likely remain on protecting him with deliberate rest scheduling, smart rotation, and load management. End product growth. We've already seen Pedri climb into better goals and assist numbers as he moves into slightly more advanced roles under Flick. The trajectory suggests he could add more direct match-winning moments to his catalog without sacrificing the structural control that makes him special. Leadership by action. He's not a loud captain, but leadership can be quieter, making the right pass, pressing at the right time, guiding teammates through the subtle art of possession. He could become, in 5 years, one of Barca's emotional and tactical leaders. If Barcelona's rebuild succeeds, Pedri will be at the center, the silent orchestra conductor. If injuries are minimized and the club sustains an intelligent rotation policy, there's no reason to think Pedri won't write a chapter of consistent brilliance into Barca's coming seasons. A closing. Why Pedri matters in the story of modern midfielders. Football often oscillates between the flash of individual genius and the slow work of systemic intelligence. Pedri is a reminder that the quiet, structurally brilliant players are often the ones who change how teams function. He doesn't need to be loud. He needs to be right, consistently. He plays with the patient logic of a chess master who understands that the winning move is often the one that others don't see until it happens. Yes, Iniesta shaped a generation. Pedri might shape the one that follows. The parallels are real. Both are small in stature, huge in footballing intelligence, and capable of producing moments of absolute clarity that unsettle great defenses. But Pedri's story adds something new: the need to survive in a game that is faster, more physically demanding, and ruthlessly scrutinized. The choices Barcelona and Spain make about his minutes, his training, and his role will be as decisive as Pedri's own choices on the ball. For now, Pedri stands as a modern exemplar of midfield craft. The kind of player who does the invisible, essential work, who occasionally floats into the kind of magic that inspires chance, and who, if fitness and management align, could be the defining midfielder of his generation. When the match ends and the highlights are tallied, many will recall the goals and the screamers. Those who watched closely will remember the simple acts: the pass that opened a seam, the interception that started a counter, the gentle swirl of movement that made everything else possible. Those moments are Pedri's signature. They are quiet, and in quiet they contain a very loud claim: this is a midfield that matters. And Pedri sits at its center. Pedri González is more than just the next Iniesta. He's his own story, shaped by rejection, resilience, and brilliance. From a kid turned away by Real Madrid to the heartbeat of Barcelona and Spain, he has proven that true greatness isn't always loud. Pedri's magic lives in the details: the perfect pass, the calm under pressure, the intelligence that makes a team tick. Injuries may have slowed him, but they never stopped him. and with Barcelona tying their future to him, it's clear. Pedri isn't just the future of Spanish football, he's already one of the best midfielders in the world today.